cooking together brings out an intimacy in your relationships that may not otherwise be there. There's a whole lot more to chick flicks than what we once thought. Girls' nights, wedding events, local restaurants do a night based on the movies in the books. That would be kind of cool to see and something I would love to be a part of. I learned that it works and a lot of people love it. And I heard such positive feedback with people doing their own nights that it's my fire to get this one going. So I learned just to trust myself and to just go with it.
We're here today with author Richard S. Sargent with a new book, The Ultimate Chick Flick Cookbook. Richard, thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
We had a lot of fun. We're going to link to your last book as well, but your new book is out, The Chick Flick Cookbook. What is the most important message you want to share with our audience today?
Well, I learned a lot while making this book, honestly, because when I started it, I just thought that chick flicks were fluff. There wasn't much meat on their bones. The whole will they, won't they, yeah, of course they're going to scenario just did not appeal to me very much. But what I heard from the horror cookbook was that we love the idea, but we don't love horror movies. Try something else. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll challenge myself with chick flicks. So I actually learned, and what I'd like other people to consider as they're making their way through the book is there's a whole lot more to chick flicks than what we once thought. Especially when you consider the food that is, intertwined within. It's really, some of them are really smart, and I just don't think they get the credit that they deserve.
I like that. That actually brings up one of my questions, which was each of the movies you talk about, you have like a 2 to 3 sentence summary right below the title. And if we're being honest, it's there. I found them to be unique. Like the first time I read one of the summaries, I thought, okay, it's gonna be like an IMDb, like, random vague summary. It's very much your point of view on each movie. And I'm curious as to how you chose whether to go more specific versus your point of view. And like the Pretty Woman, for instance, all these different movies, like the When Harry Met Sally. So if you could bring one or two up and explain how you chose to be so unique with your summaries.
Yeah, of course. I like to explain to the reader why I chose what I chose. There are a lot of other cookbooks out there, a lot of film cookbooks that are just like, oh, she wears a pink dress, here's a pink cocktail. That's what I try to avoid. So I like to explain in my little blurbs why I chose what I chose, how I related to that scene in particular or the movie overall, and why I feel like it's a cut above the rest of the other chick flicks in this case. So that's how I choose what to write there. Like with the Pretty Woman one that you brought up, my recipe for that is, of course, escargot related because she throws it across the room. So instead of just doing your traditional escargot and butter and garlic, I made a dip out of it. So I wanted to explain that that's how the path that I took to get to my recipe, basically. So with Pretty Woman, that's how I did that. And then with When Harry Met Sally, that's a classic that I think people are starting to maybe look at a little negatively. They saying that that's where we started criticizing women and calling women complicated and things like that, which is why I chose the recipe that I chose where she makes her order at the restaurant and he calls her high maintenance. I wanted to show that she's not high maintenance. She just knows what she likes, and there's a huge difference. So I went with her order, but I tweaked it for my own taste and to make it a little more original, but still bring you into the film. So that's sort of how I got to my blurb and my recipe for When Harry Met Sally.
Perfect. So let's go back to the beginning. And obviously you mentioned your horror cookbook from a year or two ago. You mentioned a little bit about choosing, same idea, different genre. Let's talk about what did you learn doing the horror cookbook that you brought into your process this time around with the romantic comedy cookbook?
Yeah, I learned that I that I need to um, test every recipe. um, it's it when I did the horror cookbook, I started out just doing it for fun. I wasn't trying to make a career out of it. So this time I learned that I need to be a little more precise with everything. um, and and a little more accessible. Like with the horror cookbook, I had things in there like alligator and piranha and things you can't really find at your local convenience store. So I tried to keep all that stuff down to a minimum this time around. Stuff you could find it locally, and if you can't, I know you can talk to your butcher and get it there. So I tried to be a little more accessible this time around for sure. But I kind of wanted to keep my general idea the same because I learned that it works and a lot of people love it, and I heard such positive feedback with people doing their own nights that it really lit my fire to get this one going. So I learned just to trust myself and to just go with it.
Is obviously when we're looking at this new book, we're with Richard Sargent today and the ultimate chick flick cookbook. With that in mind, whether it's a girls' night out, whether it's a dinner party, whether it's some kind of a dating experience, do you keep in mind the context of how this book will be used? And if so, what are some of the things you think about? What kind of experiences do you think are perfect for the chick flick cookbook?
Yeah, I actually do consider all of that. I think that, well, as you know, film is one of my favorite things in the world, and cooking as well. So being able to combine that, I feel like there are so many different ways to experience this. Um, you know, yes, a girls' night would be perfect for this book, even for the horror book, but it would be perfect for this book. Get all your friends together, cook together. It's cooking together brings out an intimacy in your relationships that may not otherwise be there. You're forced to be in the same room. It's a little, you got high stakes going on, so, it brings people together. And I think that, just like, in these films, it's kind of the same. But I think girls' nights now apparently, wedding events. um, I'd love to see local restaurants do a night based on the movies in the books. That would be kind of cool to see, and something I would love to be a part of. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, date night would be perfect. Yeah, I mean, I just try to consider the many ways this can be used and try to appeal to all of that.
Beautiful. So I'm going to name a few of the movies just because I think you did such a fun job picking the movies. As usual, you always pick fun movies. And if we can go over just, I'll name, obviously there's Legally Blonde, there's Dirty Dancing, Little Women, Waitress, of course, Barbie. When it comes to the dishes, can you talk about, and you don't have to go into detail with the dish itself, but just how you came up with the pairings and what was that process looking like for you?
Yeah. So the way I come up with the dishes typically is if they eat something important or there's any sort of food or beverage reference in the film that is more than just, hey, look, I'm drinking, a glass of milk or something. If it's important, I will use it and I will figure out a way to make it work, and that's where I will start and then build my recipes off of that. So like for Waitress with the pie. I mean, there were so many things to choose from that movie, but the moment that I thought was, the most romantic was when she made that pie with him, for him, to teach him how to make the pie. Um, so that is, where I went to with that. But, and that's typically how I'll go, as long as it's an important moment. And if I can't find something that they ate, I'll maybe, base it on where the film takes place. Is there a meal that everybody is familiar with from, Chicago or wherever, and then do my own twist on that.
And the one thing I want to mention, so it's interesting to hear you talk about your process and how it's evolved from the last book to this one. I believe drinking games were involved in both. I thought this time there was a lot more detail as far as watching the movie along with as you're cooking and eating and such. And it's just a lot of fun, man. I can't begin to tell you how much fun your books are for me.
Thank
You
you.
bring up any of the drinking tips or the drinking games you might remember and talk us through one or two of them.
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the ones that I really liked was when I was watching Under the Tuscan Sun, and I just, God, it's such a magical movie as far as the atmosphere goes. And I just kept thinking, yeah, I could live there. I definitely want to live there. I could live there for a year, maybe 6 months. Why don't I just retire there? And I thought that like every 10 minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, are other people going to think this about, as they're watching this movie and the beautiful landscape of Italy? Are they going to think, wow, I want to live there? I'm going to make that my drinking game. So every time you think, yeah, I want to live there, you have to take a shot. So that is my drinking game for Under the Tuscan Sun, which I really like, because that makes it a little more personal than some of the other things you may find. What are the other ones that I like? Let me think. What was a good one? I have the book right here. um, Oh, the thriller one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, 13 Going on 30 was another fun one that I like. That's top five favorite chick flicks for me anyway. But watching that movie, the music that they use in it is just so iconic, and it brings you, into her world. Um, and so I wanted to incorporate that into the drinking game. So take a 5-second drink every time you hear a popular song, but take a 10-second chug for the Thriller dance, which is what I based my drink on. So when she's at the bar drinking her pina colada, not virgin, that's what I based my drink on for the movie. So I wanted to incorporate that into the drinking game as well. So that's why I did a sort of 2-layered drinking game for that. So yeah, the drinking games are fun, and hopefully people enjoy them.
I noticed, and I might be reading into it a little bit, but I felt like there were a few suggestions towards body positivity. And I'm wondering if that was a deliberate choice, if that was reaching not a generation that's now more looking to that, or if that just happened to be the wording sometimes and I was reading into it.
um, I'm glad that you did get that message. It may have been subconscious for me putting it in there. I'm not sure, because that's something I've always struggled with myself, and that's something that I, do find relatable personally for a lot of these chick flicks. But did I intend to necessarily put that in there? I guess maybe subconsciously I did.
I just, for me, when I look at cookbooks, we don't often think of that. And I just found one or two, and they were talking like 2, 3 words here and there. It was very subtle. And I just thought, what a unique idea to do that. So I wanted to ask, and apparently it was subliminal or subconscious, which kind of makes it even better.
Yeah.
Um, from all the different recipes in the book, now that you're getting reader feedback and audience feedback, is there one or two that you keep hearing about how much people love a certain recipe?
Um, for this one, they love the girls trip recipe. I did a po' boy, but I used flavors you wouldn't usually use, like banana and grapefruit, in the preparation of the po' boy, and and people really seem to be responding well to that one. For the horror book, man, I surprisingly, the popcorn from Scream gets a lot of love. Um, I hear how it's the best popcorn people have ever tasted, and I'm like, great. I have other really hard stuff in there. Did you like that? but no, it's great to hear. Any type of feedback, uh, to just be able to say, okay, I did something right.
Good for you. So as we know, and as our audience from the last time around knows, you do have a film background. This is now your second cookbook. Are you considering a cooking show? Is that something that's seriously in your future? You have to be, yeah, look at your face. You've been asked about it. Where
uh,
we're not allowed to talk about it, or
no, we can definitely talk about it. Being real with you, that gives me so much anxiety. I just having somebody watch me go through this process sounds like a total nightmare. But it is something I have talked about with a few producers about, maybe doing something, especially with the horror one, where we bring in maybe a star of the film and have them cook with fans of the film, from the book, and we've tossed around several ideas, maybe just doing it for YouTube, that this or that, but then I would host it or something like that. But I don't. There's nothing set in stone. It is something we that I'm discussing. Yes.
you should definitely do it. And even as you express your anxiety about it, the one thing I would bring up is from our conversations, at least, you come across as a very personable person. And so, A, I think you'd get more comfortable with it as you did a few. But B, from an audience, because here's the reality. I think most people feel anxiety in a kitchen. And so you being the host or, part of the show, having that anxiety is so extremely relatable. Like I cook at several times a week. I'm rarely comfortable with any part of the process, and I'm usually cooking something based on something professionally, like what we're talking about here, kind of stuff. I just think people are anxious to begin with in a kitchen. So if anything, embrace that perhaps. Um, as we wrap up though, what are the best ways to stay in touch with you for our audience who's either knew about you from last time or they're just meeting you today? What are the best ways to find the new book and learn more and follow you?
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at, Movie Cookbook Series, um, which has changed from last time. So it's Movie Cookbook Series this time, and you can buy my books on Amazon, or your local bookstore. Um, so that's where you can find me, and I usually keep my Instagram updated, and sometimes I do a little bonus recipe here or there, and I'm trying to do a little book tour now, set up some different festivals and things to go to. So I should be, maybe I'll be coming to your city, sometime soon. So yeah, stay in touch on Instagram. I would love to hear from you, and if you do your own movie nights, I'd love to hear about them. And yeah.
Now, I noticed you said book series. So is there another book on the way?
Yes. So the next book that will be coming out is the Queer Movie Cookbook. So it'll be focused on, LGBTQ plus themed films.
Outstanding. And not to spoil any of that, but are there any titles out there we should be thinking about, getting excited about? And when will that book, do we have a release date for it yet, or is it too far in the future?
I don't have a release date for it yet. I have already put the finishing touches on it though. But I'm thinking maybe by the end of the year, I'm hoping that it's out. If not, maybe early next year. Um, and I tried to use a lot of the classics, but a lot of ones maybe people haven't necessarily heard of or seen before.
Perfect. Well, one last push to promote this amazing book with Richard S. Sargent, The Ultimate Chick Flick Cookbook. Richard, as we go by it, as we bring it to our kitchen this week, any message for the audience? They bought the book, they're in the kitchen, they want to be having your vibes with them, they're excited about the night. Any message to them as they're about to cook one of these amazing fun recipes?
Have fun. I mean, that's why I make these books. I want to make the people that use them have as much fun as the people in the films. So have fun, enjoy your time with the people that you're cooking with and watching the movies with, and I hope that it becomes a meaningful night for you and maybe your relationship.